see
It
anybody
looks
else
like
representing the district. Think of something that's important to mention. Okay. But I got a couple other little doodads to take care of. And first of all, we have our co-chair in the audience. Michael, hello. How are you doing? You have anything special to share with this audience? We got 40 people in-house and out of house. Between the two, we got a good showing today. 40 people. So
We have a good group and many QSs online, Tom. And could you ask Rob to make me a co-host so I can control what's going on this end?
that's Rob's the boss here. He's the one that tells me how high to jump when it's time to jump. Okay.
Is he going on for who's going on first?
Thank you, Rob. So Tom, we
Are
need
we
the
working?
order. Yeah, the agenda, the order.
Oh, the order of speakers. Yes, I can take care of that without too much trouble. As normally, I would always have QS candidates go first. And so Ralph is supposed to be first and Brian is second. Third speaker is Diane. And final speaker is Susanna Lee. That's the order. Anything else, Michael?
I think we're doing great, Tom. Let's get
You ready
going.
to go? Okay. And Jeremiah's had his warning, but Connie has a couple things to say. So let me let her, so I don't have to remember as much.
Good evening, everyone. Tom, remind me if I need reminding. If you are a member of the audience, I invite you to take the orange sheets, the full-size sheets, and give feedback to the speakers, especially the two qualifying candidates. They will appreciate your statements, what you liked about their presentation, any suggestions. The shorter or smaller white sheets are just for the people who are currently qualified speakers, and they do the voting on whether the person achieves a QS status or not. We have a new section of our newsletter called QS Successes. QS's Successes. And if you read it this time, you found out that Dr. Michael Alexander spent about a month traveling in China. We thought that sounded quite exciting. We gave a little tiny hint about what he experienced, but asked him if he might want to be a speaker next month. And he was delighted to do so, he said. So that will be one of our speakers. Oh, that's true. Speaking of coming back, am I supposed to talk about going to prison?
Sure, absolutely. We wouldn't be operating if some of our members or QSs that our tech wizard back there didn't get out of prison the other day. You might explain that?
We went to prison and yay, they let us out. We went to judge a speech contest. There were 5 qualified speakers plus a couple extra people. There was Suzanne Leonard and Rob Gunneman, Daryl Zeller, Tom, and I were all judges for this contest that included humorous, tall tales, and table topics. And it was quite interesting. I think Tom has been in the prisons to hear the speech contests. For me, it was my first time, and it was really quite a very special experience. Anything else I'm supposed to note?
I think that pretty well covered the waterfront. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I'll take that. And we'll ensure everyone has their ballot and vote. That's important. I'm going to let you know ahead of time. Next month we have program. We have QSs, 3 QSs. You'll be speaking Willie Davis, Judy Van Arsdale is in the audience here, I know. Dr. Michael Alexander will be speaking next month. In December, we have the speech competition. We got to call it the right thing, otherwise we get in too much trouble. We're doing tall tales, humorous, and table topics, and we'll be allowing the audience to vote only. Everybody in the audience is a judge, so we won't be qualifying judges. So it'll be a true democracy. You know about democracy, right? Well,
Right,
okay,
right,
good. As a college professor, I think he knew about it.
We're trying to defend that in this election.
Anyway, and so that'll be the month in December. We'll try to have as many people participate as possible. So if you sign up for more than one, you have to be a member of District 12, a dues paying member of District 12. But if you sign up for more than one, we may have to limit that because we want to make sure as many different people have the opportunity to present. If you need words on tall tales, is 3 to 5 minutes. So, but you can look up the rules at the international website for each of the contests. So. Okay, we had a really great meeting last month. We had, it was closing in on 50 people because of all the presenters. And so that was really special. So because of that, though, I think I had people speak to me. I had, I think, 5 people talk to me about becoming a qualified speaker in the future. So we will be trying to work those in, making sure they're knowing what they have to do to qualify to go for their QS. I want to make sure I don't ever not have a meeting where we don't thank the VA hospital for giving us this facility, for Rob and Deanne for being the tech people that are putting it on, allow us to go into the homes of everybody. It's the district for supporting Speakers Bureau. And Sharon Kennedy for putting out the flyer, the animated flyer, and Sandy Emelino for putting her foot in the door to get us into this facility to start with. Okay. Now, Jeremiah, do you have anything from the benefit of the district to share with us?
Sure, yeah. Do we not have, if we don't have one of the trio members on for the district, just want to remind everybody that yesterday was, basically October 1st. So if you haven't paid your dues yet, please make sure you do that. If your club has members that haven't paid, make sure you guys connect with them to remind them of that. Also, just remember too that in 7 days, Pathways is going to be, our base camp will be shut down for a couple of weeks while they're upgrading to the new management system. There is a process. So if you have pending paths, you want to make sure you get those submitted because you can lose progress if you don't go through all the proper things. There's more information on base camp. Make sure you talk to your district officers about that too. If you have any questions, there's plenty of people to be able to help. Also, for the next 6 weeks too, we're still doing the district-wide Moments of Truth. And the Tuesday email has all the information in there and the link to that. We would love to get your feedback so that way the district can make sure that they're providing the best programs possible to them. I know they have quite a lot of things going on in regards to some new clubs going. Training is going to be coming up here very soon, and all the area directors are working with their division directors to start scheduling their visits. So make sure you put on your smiling faces for your area directors and give them your best foot forward because they're going to be putting together those reports. Thank you so much, Tom.
I'm not gonna move.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeremiah. So I think we're ready to go with our program. We have 4 speakers, so we don't have a lot of time to waste. And we will begin with our first qualifying speech. So all of you QSs in the audience, be prepared to make notes and be able to reply later on. He'll have a chance to have some suggestions given to him after his presentation. All right, speaker number 1, Ralph Dieter, DTM, current Vice President of Public Relations of Route 66, past Division A Governor, Division A Director, as well as Area A4 Director, giving his qualifying speech. It's 18 to 20 minutes. Tomorrow will be a better day. Tomorrow will be a better day. Ralph Dieter.
Tomorrow will be a better day. Without hope, you're lost or even dead. This is a story of one family's answer to Holocaust deniers and one family's immigration story. It is also an attempt to avoid getting submerged in the melting pot. My story begins with my father Olaf's story growing up in Nazi Germany as being half Jewish. He was born in the Czech Republic, and at age 3, he immigrated with his mother to Frankfurt, Germany. It was never easy for him growing up. because Germans at that time didn't trust people who were born elsewhere. But my father adapted to his environment until one day a bitter stepfather turned him into the Gestapo for being half Jewish. Feeling betrayed and desperate, and knowing he was facing a slow death, he was told he had to appear at the train station for deportation. There's a euphemism. So he was sent to a Is it? Okay, he was sent to a concentration camp for forced labor with his head held high. And he adapted to his environment. People there worked in the harshest of environments until they couldn't work anymore because of injury or sickness, and then death usually followed. 1 in 3 died in this camp. 1 in 3. How did my father and others survive? They had strong mental toughness. For my father, it was tomorrow will be a better day. Hope, resilience. Tomorrow will be a better day finally came with liberation by Patton's Third Army. The U.S. Army saved my father's life. Otherwise, I would be making this speech. My mother, Ilsa, had her own story. She was born in a poor farming region, and she and her family lived in a rundown old grain mill in the middle of the farm. Oh, slow. This takes a little time. She developed a quiet toughness, like most farm girls do. She found out that she had an intelligence she didn't know she had in school, and she developed great strength working on the farm. And when she couldn't find a job of any other kind, this helped her join a performance troupe on the high wire. Because performers have to be very strong to control themselves on the high wire. My father carried the group's equipment in his truck. He got a job, even though jobs were very hard to find. I mean, people didn't even have enough food to keep from occasionally starving. But after the war, he developed his own trucking company. He carried the troops' equipment around. They performed in various places all over post-war Germany. You can see the ruins because of the bombing. And this is when my father and my mother fell in love when they were in a location called Garmisch. It's a beautiful resort location. But then something happened that was very difficult. They had a performer who drove a motorcycle on the high wire, and he fell off and was killed. So my mother and father decided to quit the troupe after that. My family, I mean, I came along in 1950, but my family had a difficult time because it was almost impossible to find an apartment or food sources. Because of the 70% destruction that happened to Frankfurt in the bombing, apartments were so hard to find. But with my father's attitude of tomorrow will be a better day, we were able to find one. It wasn't much. One room and a bathroom that we had to share with other families. My parents decided that they wanted to improve their lives. And they started considering immigrating to the US. But it wouldn't be easy. Because the family was getting reparations from the German government because my father was a concentration camp survivor. And it was just very difficult for them to live. There was something else too. Germans around my father always whispered things like, "Yeah, that's Judah." That guy's a Jew. My father had enough of hearing that kind of stuff. And that made him even more strongly inclined to leave Germany. But as I said, it wasn't easy. Because they'd have to give up things. Like the reparations from the German government. And also my father had gotten another job when his trucking company failed. He got a job with the American military in Frankfurt. He had a certain hiring preference because he'd been a concentration camp inmate. So they'd have to give up that job with the Americans too. But my parents were still strongly inclined to leave Germany. So the die was cast, as Julius Caesar said. We left our precious apartment and moved into an internment camp for refugees. Actually, it was a prison camp because once you went into the camp, they didn't automatically let you out. We all had intensive physical exams because the US government didn't want to let disease-ridden immigrants into the country. That wasn't all. US Army intelligence officers interrogated my parents to see if they were communists or Nazis. When the authorities were finally convinced that we were healthy, regular people, we were released from the camp and moved to a holding camp in Bremerhaven, a port on the North Sea. Dad's mantra got us through again. And then the day came when we were about to embark on an old Liberty ship. for the 2 to 3 week journey between Bremerhaven and New Orleans in the US. My grandmother stood on the dock and cried so hard that her body was visibly shaking. Both she and my mother knew that they probably would never see each other again. When the day came that we were about to disembark in New Orleans, the skipper of the ship decided that he would delay a day in docking, so we would arrive on June 14th, 1951, Flag Day. Eagerly and excitedly, my parents came down the gangplank to first step foot in the land of unlimited opportunities. But my parents were in for a big shock. My father went into a bathroom and everybody stared at it. Like, what are you doing in here? And my father's first thoughts were, oh no, not again, not here in the US. My mother and I were sitting on a park bench and we received the same look from a woman sitting on the other end of the park bench. What was going on? We surveyed the area, and then we understood. The bathroom was designated for Black people. My father had seen this kind of thing in Nazi Germany happening to the Jews. Again, fear entered his body. He didn't think he'd ever have that happen here. That's why we came here. But in any case, turns out that German lawyers had observed Jim Crow laws at work in the South during the 30s. So the Nazis' segregation system between Jews and non-Jews had been influenced by the Jim Crow South. We decided to not do any sightseeing and proceed to our permanent residence. So we hopped on a train and traveled to Petaluma, California, north of San Francisco. Tomorrow will be a better day had arrived for us. We were grateful to the Lutheran World Relief Organization, which arranged an introduction with a Lutheran church that had sponsored us. When you're an immigrant, if you want things to flow smoothly, you have to have a sponsor. For the first few days, we lived behind the curtain of a multipurpose room of the church. Then my father got his first job in this country working in a lumber yard. A parishioner owned a lumber yard. The same parishioner gave us our first apartment. But then we really began to understand the difference in living standards. We got our first single family house. It had 2 bedrooms, one for me and one for my parents. It had a bathroom that only my family used. What a difference between our house and the apartment in Frankfurt. No more complaints about an occupied bathroom because we were the only occupants. My parents began to achieve all the things they had dreamed about. They went to a local community college and conquered their language problems and received degrees. Tomorrow was a better day. My mother continued her education at San Francisco State and became a fifth grade teacher. She went on to achieve 2 master's degrees, one in special reading problems and one in marriage and family therapy. She had a 16-year counseling practice. Not bad for a poor farm girl who only made it to the 8th grade in the old country. My father got a job as a psychiatric technician in an institution for the developmentally disabled. By the way, the Nazis also sent developmentally disabled people to concentration camps. So my father had great pleasure in serving the developmentally disabled population and high respect from his colleagues. Again, tomorrow was a better day. When my parents, even after they retired, they still had very important things that they did. My father was highly incensed by this Holocaust denial stuff that we see nowadays. So he began lecturing to organizations that were dedicated to Holocaust remembrance, to educational institutions and religious institutions of all faiths until almost the day that he died in 2014. But the pain that came from his persecution stayed with him almost to the day he died. And he even cried about 2 weeks before he died. But nevertheless, he still had an attitude of tomorrow will be a better day, right to the end. My mother retired from her counseling practice and became active in her church, especially her choir. Their choir toured Europe, performed in Germany, and even in St. Petersburg, Russia. She taught her 3 children, I was one of them, until she passed in 2019. My parents' experiences of hunger and hope and resilience gave me a safe haven to be who I became. Their wisdom helped me to be successful. I achieved the top 10 ranking in my high school of 500 students. But it wasn't all fun and games. Before kindergarten, they had told my parents that I had to stop speaking German at home, or I wouldn't, I'd have difficulty in school. That didn't prove to be correct. I continued with my service in the US Army, serving in various places in the US. And after I got out, I continued my education and got a PhD in economics. I went into corporate management in various corporations, including Intel Corporation and United Airlines, and finished my working life as a professor of economics. I will continue learning until I pass from this earth, just as my parents encouraged me to do. I have seen the learning opportunities in Toastmasters. And I know in my heart anybody know what this insignia is? Military intelligence. And I know in my heart that tomorrow will be a better day. Mr. Toastmaster.
It goes slow sometimes.
Thank you.
All right, now, you're not done yet. You gotta put up with these questions from the.
Oh, okay.
members of the audience here.
Questions and answers.
Our tradition is we go to QSs first. First, we go to QSs to ask questions, and then we will have open questions from others. So let's start with all our qualified speakers, so we could go back and forth between those at home and those who are here. So let me, just to make things easy, we'll start. Is anybody online that has a question or a comment on Ralph's presentation? Hope they're hearing. I see Jeremiah's got a hand up. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Are you looking for feedback right now, Tom, or is just questions, just so I'm clear?
Question.
Oh, really? Quick feedback, question.
Okay, so if we're looking for feedback, I'll get it started. So Ralph, I appreciate your story. I really liked your story. It was very personal. It was very open and authentic. And I thought that was great. And I thought it was a great tribute as well to your parents about a lot of the struggles that they've went through and everything. And while I appreciate that, there was some technical difficulties, and especially in a hybrid world and things like that, PowerPoint just in general sometimes can be a challenge. And I think that was a challenge today for you in some sort of way, because you weren't for sure if the slide was moving, if it did move forward. And so you kind of would go back and forth between the lectern to take a look at it. And I thought that was kind of a distraction. And I think you also were so focused on making sure you said the right words instead of trying to get it to flow very clearly. There was a lot of times as you were going through, you were telling your story. It was almost lecture-ish. And I don't even know if that's really a word, but it was more like I was listening to a lecture than I was hearing this story as you were going through and everything. And it was a powerful story. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there to be able to grow. And I'd love to see you really kind of polish that and find those transitions and really be able to just really tighten this up, because that's a very powerful story that you have to share with everybody as you're going through. So I'll kind of leave some more for others, but that was my couple of cents. Thank you. Thank you for sharing today.
Okay. All right. I'll get back to somebody in the audience here, Dominique.
Come up here, so
Yeah, I think up here, that way they can see you too.
Hi, Ralph.
Hi.
I thought that your cadence was fantastic. There was a lot of power and emotion in this story, and the pace with which you went was the perfect pace for me to absorb the story. Because of the heavy emotional content, I was so afraid a couple of times that you would go faster, and you never did. And I loved this pace. It was perfect. The message of hope and triumph over these tragic beginnings. You mentioned hope from the very beginning, which let us know that, well, you're here. So obviously there was a happy ending. But you have such a strong voice and such wonderful confidence. And I was a little distracted by your beautiful cheekbones, because I've got a front row visage here of your wonderful jaw and cheekbones. And I couldn't help but think how this story was dramatic, easy to follow. You didn't move around a lot, but in a way that was good, because it didn't distract me. I almost wish there was a single spotlight on it, almost like a stage reading. I could picture this in a single theater, which is one. You demonstrated wonderful stoicism during some of the more emotional parts. And I don't know if you were fighting emotion or not, but it looked like you were. And when you were fighting the emotion, that made me more emotion. And then I was fighting it on your behalf. I was feeling it vicariously for you. That is such a powerful technique. Couple things to improve: empty your pockets in the future from any items for a smoother look. And even though the material is heavy at times, try to find opportunities for lighter moments here and there. Yeah, not necessarily out and out humor, but lighter, maybe a little joke about the trapeze act, or your mom was light on her feet, or just some little something to make us smile a little before it gets real bad. And just a little bit of little tension and release. That's all I got. You were fantastic. I thought this was, I've seen you speak a couple of times. This is the best time I've ever seen you speak. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have anybody else online? We have a few other QSs online, and we'd like to hear from you too.
I can share some feedback.
Oh,
Can you hear me okay?
Jazz, okay, I got you. Yeah, we got you. Go.
Okay, perfect. All right, Ralph. Well, I've heard you share this speech for the second time now, and I will say that it was another wonderful speech. I can see that you have been working on polishing it. Could definitely see that there is some stronger points than last time. Some of the things that I really loved is your composure as you shared a speech that was very heartfelt. There was a lot in there that evoked emotion within you, of course, but inevitably it was evoking emotion in every single one of us. And I loved how you were able to pick those moments that really allowed you to go deep within and share those with the audience and pair it with the pictures and everything else that you had in that slideshow. I know you had some technical challenges with that, but I think you dealt with that really, really well. If I was to suggest something that I believe could elevate your speech a little bit more, I would have loved to see some audience engagement at times. And I know this story was very personal, it was lived experience, but at times there were moments in there. You know, you could have asked the audience, I think you were talking about your mother at one point, about how she identified a skill that she never knew she had, right? So that might be a place where you could say, can I get a show of hands if there, you know, one day you've woke up and you have identified a skill that you've had the entire time, but it's a very useful skill and there's so many incredible things that you can do with that, right? And then really pause and get some audience engagement. And that's just one example that I have. In addition to that, I would have loved to see some more hand gestures from you. Again, I know you had the clicker in one hand, but I would have loved for you at times to put your hand on your heart when you're talking about this is something that I hold dearly, right? When you're talking about hope, I would love to kind of see you really show us what does that look like for you, and allow for the audience to connect with that emotion even more and feel it on a deeper level. I didn't see a lot of that audience engagement, but there were definitely times where you could sprinkle that in. But overall, I thought it was wonderful how you had weaved in that thread of hope and how you had weaved in that mantra, tomorrow will be a better day, was done just with so much grace, and I think it was done perfectly. So congratulations on sharing a wonderful speech with us, Ralph.
All right, thank you, Josh. I'm gonna throw in one little thing. I might come back later, but a suggestion, maybe someone else in the audience will disagree with my suggestion, but you had some problem getting the video to work.
Right.
Have someone else do it. So you just point to them and they do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that would certainly no problem with that. I think that might be helpful. And then you won't have to, you're not worried about it. And besides that, if it screws up, you can blame them. Anyway, do we have any other QSs with comments before I call on an audience member? So
I've got one.
you got one, Randy,
Somebody
okay.
behind me got one? Oh, okay.
Don't worry, we'll get to.
Get these old bones up. Ralph, how you doing?
Okay, how you doing? Ray?
Man, I heard you deliver this speech before,
Right.
and so you're back again,
I'm.
in living color. And you
Can't
did,
keep a good man down.
that's right, keep on pushing, right?
Right.
And you did a fabulous job. And I agree with a lot of the feedback, but here's what I would suggest.
Okay.
You have a foundational phrase that you peppered through.
Right.
Tomorrow will be a better day.
Right.
At the very end, connect that to what you want us to know about hope. Transfer that to us, the audience, so that key takeaway, when we walk out that door, what do you want us to walk out with?
Hope.
Hope. Bouncing back, never giving up. Like Daniel Piella says, never ever give up. That's gonna wrap it up and send us home, and it's gonna work for us. Let's try that.
I will, thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Do we have anybody else online? I don't want to skip anybody that wants to. We still have. Okay, well, I guess we can start calling on, since I'm having to pull people up here. Okay, Barbara, you're one, go ahead.
Am I the Barbara that you're referring to, Tom?
Okay, go ahead, Barbara. We're ready for you.
Yes. Well, Ralph, this was such a pleasure to hear you deliver this speech. I've had the good fortune of hearing you practice this speech over time, and I felt this was your most powerful delivery, that you really knew the speech in a way that it was just part of you. I too enjoyed the pacing because it allowed me, just as a previous speaker has mentioned, it allowed me to absorb the story with all its detail, which I think just makes it so real. It's a story that truly needs to be told to the world. And when it's told in the way that you have done it, I think it really resonates with all of us about needing to make the world a better place and to make the tomorrow a better day for everyone. So in terms of your pacing, in terms of the resonance in your voice, your vocal variety on certain phrases, and from my vantage point, I'm online, but from my vantage point, you use the stage effectively. That I saw you looking directly at the audience and wanting to connect with the audience about your message. Your visuals are wonderful. I realize you might have had some technical snags, but I think the visuals are so powerful and they enhance your speech. They give us a sense of being there and being with your family in their journey. So I'm not a voting member, I'm not a QS, but regardless of whatever the decision is, this is a story that needs to be told. So please stay with it and keep going with your heart.
Thank you, Barbara. As you can imagine, I get a lot of phone calls from people looking for clubs to join and participate. One of the pieces of advice I always say is go and check out a number of clubs. Join the club with the best evaluators, not the one with the best speakers. Because it's the best evaluators that will help you to become better. Because they'll be, and this is where the experience of going for your QS is you get evaluated by the best that there is. So the comments, even though they might not all agree, you're still getting feedback from the best of evaluators. Now, do we have any? I have someone who's anxious to speak, so I'm going to call on her first of all or not. Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to know, did you say where your family docked when they arrived?
They were on the audience.
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah.
How many times have you given this speech?
Well, I've been working on it for months.
Yeah, well, I think it's amazing that you don't get emotional and that you don't cry because it's a sad, awful truth that happened in our history. And
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that there are people who are trying to say it didn't happen. So thank you for that reminder. And yes, keep telling your story because we need, again, to hear it.
Yeah, go ahead.
This person,
Go ahead.
check him up or here?
Wherever you want to, come on up. Yeah, we want to see you.
Okay.
They want to see you.
Cheap seats in back. Hey, Ralph, great job.
Thank you.
So as a history buff and a bit of a World War II historian, I was moved by the fact that such an epic event in history is just one touch, one person away from me. That's so impactful. When I saw the photo of your father sitting there in the camp garb, wow, stunning. I agree with Barbara and the others. This is a story that has to be told. You're the right person to tell it. I think you did a great job. There are a couple things that if I were to see it again, I would hope to see, just my opinion. The two, I'm not worried about the technical. I'm assuming you'll be in a venue that has adequate technology, fast internet, slides will move when you want them. Not worried about that. There were times where you looked down a lot as you talked. Now you did make good contact, eye contact with the audience. So I'm not saying you didn't, but for those extended times, I felt like you disconnected a little bit, but that didn't happen a lot. So not a big deal. The only other suggestion I would say is this is a particularly powerful speech. This is one with a lot of emotional impact. And while not everything has to be as heavily weighted, I personally would want to see you cut some of the lightweight extraneous elements. when movies get made, for instance, a director films a lot of material. And then they put together a first edit. And then they give it to the producer, and those finance guys chop it short. It can't be 2.5 hours, it's gotta be 2 hours on the nose, right? They chop beloved material out. And then it goes in the theatrical release. And we don't know what was chopped away, and we love it. This is my first time seeing this, so I don't have the perspective of how much you've improved. But for instance, for Tomorrow's a Better Day, you're getting your PhD in economics, your mother getting dual masters is stunning proof that tomorrow was a better day. The fact that you were in the top 10 in your high school, less so. So what I'm saying is, for brevity, I would suggest looking for more of the big impact and maybe cutting the lesser just filler material, truthful though they may be. And I think it'll carry that impact uninterrupted to the crescendo of how successful your family was. Because it certainly impacted me and I loved it. Thank you, Ralph.
Well, unless, I haven't seen any budding, jumping up hands, so I think we better let you go, so we have.
Oh,
I'll be more than glad to
Charlotte
chat
is
with
wanting to.
Tom,
you.
Tom, Dr. Charlotte wants to speak.
Oh, Charlotte, okay, sure, go ahead, Charlotte.
Can I just
Good to
make
see you.
a couple of comments? Ralph, I just want to tell you how proud I am of the courage and the persistence that you have had to do this. I cannot tell you the improvement that I've seen in the time and the effort that you have made to have this speech be meaningful to you and the audience. Keep working, keep polishing, keep telling your story. I love the ideas that people gave you today, and I particularly liked the human connection that I think Jazz said about making that interact with the audience. So we'll continue to work on that. But thank you, thank you, thank you for bringing this to our attention.
All right, thank you, Ralph.
Okay.
And we will go to our next, those of you who are QS, get to either online vote or turn in here, wherever, whoever is collecting those. And we go to our second person seeking their qualified speaker status, and that will be Dominique. Will be doing the introduction. Dominique, go on down.
Back in 2011 or 12, I gave a presentation at the Palm Desert Chamber of Commerce. It was a couple of minutes long, 5 minutes. I was sponsoring their chamber event. And they gave me a couple of minutes to talk about my business. And the gentleman came up to me at the end and said, how do I get to be as good as you? And I was so flattered, of course, by being told I was a good speaker that I almost started to take credit for it. Until I stopped myself and said, well, you have to come to Toastmasters. I didn't want to say, well, you just be me. But I did. And he said, what's Toastmasters? And boom, bang, bing. 2 days later, he showed up, and 12 years later, here we are. My husband, Brian Rowley, who I sponsored as a qualified speaker, will be sharing with everyone his super secret way on how you can use your brain's pharmacy to make yourself happy. Brian?
I'm sorry.
Missing point.
There we go. I think I got it now. I got it, baby. Thank you. Just there. All right. Boys and girls, moms and dads, children of all ages, Bozo Circus is on the air. Those are words I heard as a child. I lived in a suburb of Chicago, and it was WGN television network, world's greatest network, WGN. And Bozo Circus was on, and I realized every time I heard those words, I got excited, and I could feel the joy of anticipating what was about to happen. So today I'm going to share with you what I call your daily dose of happiness. And DOSE is the acronym. It's D-O-S-E. You're going to hear me say this at least 6 times, and I'm hoping you'll say it at least 4 times with me. I'll get you started. It is dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. These are all chemicals that work in your brain depending on what's going on with you, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, other things you can do. You can create these chemicals for yourself, and it's just like you have a secret drug deal going on in there, just for you and your happiness. The first one is dopamine. So it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. The first one is dopamine, and that is the anticipation drug. When you're looking forward to something so much, and you start to get excited, and you think, oh, this is going to be so great. Like when I was a kid, and the carnival would come to town, I had to walk about 4 blocks to get to the carnival. It was that close to me. And as I'm walking along, I start to hear the kids on the ride screaming, having all that fun and the excitement that was generated for them at the carnival. And as I even got closer, I could smell the popcorn. And as I marched on, wait, yeah, I do. I have to bring my change. I had to have a pocket full of quarters, otherwise I'm not going to be able to enjoy it when I got there. Had my quarters, so I'm okay. And as I got even closer, there was that sweet smell. And I know they've got cotton candy there. I'm going to get me some of that. That is dopamine in a nutshell. Think of the last time you were so looking forward to something that before you even had the thing you were looking forward to, you just were jazzed. Your brain is on fire. You're just really happy and excited. It's D-O-S-E, and I want you to try to say it with me. Are you ready? It's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Yay, we're getting there. All right. The second one is oxytocin. This is the love drug. All right. Whenever you hug somebody, even if you shake hands or fist bump, you see guys on the football field slapping each other on. All of the physical contact you can have with someone else is going to create oxytocin for the two of you. And the best part about hugs is that you never run out. Your supply is unlimited, and every time you give one, you get one. So it's a win-win situation. There are other ways to generate oxytocin. One of them is by being helpful and kind to other people. What happens in that case is the person you're helping feels the love that you're expressing in the kind thing you're doing for them. And you get it too, because guess what? You came up with this great idea of being helpful to someone else. What happens to everybody else? Anybody else who sees you being nice to someone else also gets a shot of oxytocin. It's like this kumbaya. We're all in this together, right? We all get to enjoy the same feeling of it's a loving kindness kind of act. And you can find ways to do it. I can give you ideas on that. But I want you to say it again with me. This is the daily dose. It's D-O-S-E. It's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So with serotonin, this is what I call nature's drug. And you can have it anytime you're willing to open your door and go outside. And if you don't know, or you haven't realized, when you go outside, that overwhelming sense of well-being that you feel, that's because you're part of nature. And nature, for lack of a better word, loves you, because that's why they call it Mother Nature, right? It's the motherly love you get by being part of this great big picture of the world. And the joy of seeing the green grass and the green trees and the blue sky, or if you're like me, and you get up real early in the morning and you step outside into that fresh air and the stars are still in the sky, you can just enjoy some peace and quiet for a moment. And look at the wonder of the beautiful artistry of the stars and the constellations. And sometimes that moon is so bright, I feel like I'm going to cry when I get outside. So use all of these. And the last one is endorphins. We're going to say it one more time. It's DOSE for your daily dose. So it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So endorphins come from any time you move, any movement. If you just do this, you're creating endorphins in your brain. You've probably heard of the runner's high. You guys are out there running miles and miles and they get into this state of Zen that they feel like they've transcended to another plane of just enjoying life. That's the runner's high. You don't have to go run a marathon to enjoy endorphins. You can do something as simple as making someone laugh. My ex-wife bought me a pair of pants one time and she said, I need you to try them on. So I put on the pair of pants and they just felt so good. They fit me so well. I started to dance. I said, this is my happy pants dance. And I did this stupid dance. I was just making her laugh. And she started laughing so hard that she could barely breathe and the tears are coming down. And I didn't know it at the time, but she was experiencing an overload of endorphins, just making someone laugh. Laughter raises your heart rate. It definitely makes your brain happy. It's more than just the laughter that's making you happy. It's the chemical response to the physical exertion of heavy breathing. Anytime you raise your heart rate, you get endorphins. So one of the things I recommend to everyone, and you've heard this your whole life, eat well, exercise, right? But the easiest exercise and one of the most beneficial exercises you can do, anybody? That's it. First thing in the morning, get out of bed, take a walk. And you're already in nature, so you're getting that double dose, right? So you can put these things in combination. And one of the things that I do, my little checklist that I go through, first let me tell you about my wife's checklist. She makes checklists of things she's going to get done during the day because every time you check off a box of an accomplishment, you get another little drip of dopamine. So my wife starts her checklist with make a checklist, and then she checks off that box. I've been going through my checklist for so long. It's not even on paper anymore. I just have it on my phone and look at it every now and then. First thing I do when I wake up is I remember that my next breath was not guaranteed, but here it is, and I'm awake. I love waking up in the morning. With my wife laying next to me, all I have to do is reach over and put my hand on her, and I get that oxytocin that I told you about, the love drug, right? And then, before I even get out of bed, I think, what am I going to get done today? Who am I going to be able to help? How much will I accomplish? And all of that is the anticipation. That's the dopamine that I told you about first, remember? So when I do get out of bed, now I'm moving. So I'm going with endorphins on this one. I get out of bed and I look forward to that snap, crackle, pop, and the pain of my knees and my toes and my ankles all snapping and crackling. And I think, man, I'm out of bed. I am way ahead now. I am cooking. I'm making so much progress. I'm just happy to be alive. And I think about all the things I have, all the things I have to be grateful for. I have a fresh drink of water. I have indoor plumbing. I have a coffee machine. So by the time the first 3 to 5 minutes of my day have gone by, I've experienced so much in the way of joy that I've created for myself. I'm feeling like it's a pretty good experience just to have another day I get to be me one more day. I highly recommend you make for yourself a checklist of all the things you're grateful for and just go through them every time you wake up in the morning. If you can do the other things, especially if you, like me, if you have pets, get your pets outside, guess what? There you are out in nature. So you've got your pets, you get the fresh air, and I'll tell you something else about pets that's good for you. If you don't have someone you can hug, pet your pets. That's why they call them pets. You're supposed to pet them. And I don't know if you know this, but it's a scientific fact that petting a dog or a cat lowers your blood pressure. Did you know that? It's people with pets live longer. That's why it's really kind of nice to have someone, in the case of dogs, you could go outside for 3 seconds to pick up the paper. By the time you come back in, they're just as happy to see you as if you came back from a 3-month vacation. They just give you this unconditional love, and you have someone to love in return. So there's your oxytocin supply. In the case of serotonin, I had an experience shortly after I decided not to be miserable anymore. It was kind of a tough time for me, but I read somewhere that if you go to the park, you take off your shoes and socks, and you walk in the grass, what happens is an electrical discharge, which is your body letting go of the stress and the tension that you carry around with you. You should try it. I guarantee it works, because by the time I got maybe 1/3 of the way into my walk in the park, the tears were coming down. I was feeling so good, and I love that experience, and having had it, always enjoy sharing that story with other people, because it's just, it's so inexpensive. You know, it's right there. If you can find a place where there's grass, all you got to do is get out there, get in, take off your shoes and socks and walk in the grass. Costs you nothing. All you have to do is make a commitment to yourself to have that experience. So you've got all these ways to apply the daily dose of happiness and the joy that comes with what's already available to you in your brain. And I think that if you were to make a list of all the things you can do to generate these things, in the case of dopamine, learning something new, every accomplishment you make, everything you check off your checklist. And in the case of oxytocin, like I said, there are lots of ways to find that you can be nice to people. I came up with a couple of them that have to do with being in the grocery store. If you're within arm's length of me, and I see some opportunity to say something to you and make you laugh, or at least smile, I always try to find a way to engage in conversation with the people who are next to me. There's another thing you do when you first go into the grocery store, where you go over here and you get your basket, right? And there might be somebody behind you who's waiting for you to get out of the way so they can get theirs. You can take your basket and say, here, you take this one, and you go right back over there and you get another one for yourself, and watch the response. People are so shocked when you just do that little simple act for them. Anything you can think of that's helpful to other people is another way to generate oxytocin for yourself. On the serotonin side, anything you can do in nature, if you happen to be a bike rider, a swimmer, a walker, anything you do that takes you outdoors gives you not only the serotonin rush, but also your movement will create those endorphins that I told you about. So I've given you all these ways to give yourself a daily dose of happiness. And what I want you to take with you, remember this dose, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So take everything you have, make your own drug deal with yourself, and go out and live your happy life. Mr. Toastmaster. Sorry? Madam Toastmaster. Oh, sorry. Q&A, that's right.
Do I need to take the bullets with you?
I think he's going to change something here.
He's going to make it so that they can hear you.
Oh,
Let me clip you.
no, because they need it again.
Well, it's up there.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Take it easy.
Should we have some questions? Okay.
QSs first.
Let's see, do we have any comments from,
They have their hands up.
they have their hands up. Okay, please unmute and make your comments.
I'll go first.
Okay, Michael.
Hello, Dominique. So Brian, thank you. I get up every morning, touch my wife and say, good morning. I go out to the espresso machine, make us both cappuccinos. I open the back door and I bring her cappuccinos. Now I know why. I love doing that. And is that a great way to start my day? And no wonder I love being retired because my day starts perfectly every day. And I can't make a list, Dominique. If I made a list to make a checklist, I couldn't do that. But I do 4 things already that work beautifully, Brian. And thank you for explaining it to me. I love it.
Let's see, any other, oh, Jeremiah, please.
Brian, thank you very much for sharing. So I really enjoyed this. There was a lot of good things that you had in your speech. I especially like you related a lot of stuff to things that we could all relate to, which was good. You talked about the circuits. You talked about things that we could understand as you're talking about these items. It's things that we could get. So I thought that was really good and that was strong. I have a couple of suggestions though, as you progress through this speech. Is the first is I liked you had the dose all the way throughout, which was good and very powerful. But I thought whenever we had to repeat all the words after each time, your hands kind of became it became just kind of I kind of lost the feeling for it. I would have loved to have you seen you say D. As we're talking about our first letter is D, and we're gonna be talking about dopamine and really getting that, and then going into O for Oxycontin. I forget what O was. I'm just kidding. It's not Oxycontin. But needless to say, but as you're going through, I would have loved to see you just focus on each one of those, but also expand on those because I felt like we went through those and then you kind of got into storytelling of at the end. And I would have loved to have seen you just expand on those because at a 15-minute speech at 4 points, it's roughly after you do opening and closing, you got about 3 minutes a point. And I would love seen you expand on those a little bit. So that way we could really just kind of focus on those 4 things and then wrap it up with the repeat on that. But I did think it was a very relatable speech and you present a very casual way. It was very comfortable to be able to follow along. So thank you very much for sharing, Jenny. It was good information.
Barbara, please. Barbara, please unmute and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
She's worried about.
There she is.
I was saying again, we should spread the wealth around. Brian, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You've got wonderful energy. And again, I felt like you were connecting with the audience. I'm seeing it from online, but I felt like you were connecting with the audience. I too, based a little bit on what Jeremiah was saying, I would have loved, and maybe you were doing it with the audience and I just couldn't hear. I would have loved as you went through the acronym or whatever is if we could repeat something or we could chime back with something. So we were kind of getting the message as you were going along. But it was very positive. It felt like you were working the stage well and giving us a message that is a nugget we can take with us. So within the time that you were speaking, I felt like I walked away with something concrete that I can put into action as well as learning. Thank you.
Anybody here?
Well, okay. I don't get out much. Can you tell I don't get out much? Brian, nice meeting you. And I love Chicago too. I have people in Chicago. You got points right there. Yeah. But here's the thing. Behind us is the screen. And the people on the screen weren't here. So they didn't feel and they didn't understand that you were going through the dose and we were repeating it with you and working through the process. very few people in my 10 years of being here at Speakers Bureau have come up and has been as professional and relaxed and engaged the audience the way you did. And you definitely know your topic, and happiness came about just being in the same room with you. So this message, the world needs a lot more of it. And despite them not being here, God bless them for where they are, but had they been here, they wouldn't have given you that kind of feedback. That's just my personal professional opinion. Fabulous job. Thank you.
Glenn, I just loved your relaxed manner. You know, I just heard little Ralph Smedley say, and we learn most in an atmosphere of enjoyment. And I enjoyed the teacherly love that you repeated things, because that's how we learn as well. But you were just comfortable to be with as you shared with us what you wanted us to know. So thank you for that.
What a great topic. I agree. It's so timely and so precious. I'm a big fan of Vanessa Van Edwards, and she talks a lot about oxytocin. So I'm really on that wavelength. So thank you so much for reinforcing that message for me. One thing I'd like to share is an observation of how to organize a speech when it might be hard to remember what the letters stand for in notes. As Jeremiah had a little bit of difficulty. So if you started very methodically, I'm going to start with C. C is for dopamine. When I get up in the morning, this is how I get my dopamine. Then I get out of bed and I get my oxytocin. Oxytocin is blah, 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 blah. Then I take a few more steps into my kitchen and I get my serotonin. This is how I get my serotonin, folks. Blah, 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 blah. And then E. E stands for endorphins. And this is how I get my endorphins after I get out of bed, hug my wife, da 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 da. That's how I get to my endorphins. So it would have been easier to follow that chronology of the getting up in the morning and then following the acronyms throughout that morning ritual. Just a suggestion, but overall, I am honored to have been here to listen to this because it's such an important message of the resources we already have, like you said, to just tap into them. Excellent.
I have a question before you go. You did that left to right. Is it because we read left to right?
You have to think about your choices. What, how would you like to represent it? You can go that way for the audience. Either way.
The audience is left to
The
right.
challenge with that is everyone has to be in the audience because you're looking out to the audience. So you have to have everyone in that. That's why I brought up the whole point of when you have people outside the audience, then you have to consider that. Now you're competing with that. And that may not be his style either. It's great to think about that. But his style is one that is very attractive and easy to watch and listen and engage. You didn't have to take up very much space at all, but your style allowed you to use the stage that you have. It's a shame they couldn't be here to feel that and to see that. So chronologically, yeah, you could do that, but it may take him out of his style.
This is true.
And you don't want to do that.
This is true, but it would take him from meandering in the story. Because if you remember, he talked about, this is how I get my DOS in the morning. And then he repeated the word, the acronym. And then he went on and then he added a bit about walking.
But he can do that organizationally on his
Yeah.
own without having to
I
just
guess my
model it.
question was, if you have an audience from Lebanon, do you reverse it? Because they read from the back of the book.
Well, you have international speaking is totally different, so you have to consider where you're speaking too.
Right. And so,
Remember, Michael used to talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
So you have to think about all those different pieces to the puzzle.
yeah,
But in this case, maybe it would have helped with
Well, just to help with the organization and for the audience to keep track of, here's the definition of deed, right? What it stands for, what it does, and here's what it looks like in everyday life.
Yeah.
And it would be easier for the audience to just kind of keep that all
I'm
together.
stealing that, so thank
I'm gonna
you.
use it. I'm gonna put it in my next presentation.
Jeremiah, online. Somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We finally moved off of that. I think, she should have her opinion and we don't need somebody's rebuttal on it. Everybody can have their opinions on things. And I thought that was not the place or the time to be able to do something like that. So I just wanted to say that we could be right or wrong, but everybody doesn't have to have their opinion to response.
Roger?
Yeah, I just wanted to say my takeaway is, yay, now I know a drug dealer.
Nothing. I love the title. I didn't not expect, but I didn't expect this chemicals, and you don't disappoint. This is perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna say
Okay,
is.
probably better move along here because we have two more speakers.
Okay, last comment.
Again, what I was gonna say is. That's the embodiment of what I was trying to say, telling my kids here. What you said has impact. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot. I have more to say, but we have a lot to be said, but all I know is, now if I reach over in the morning and ambulance moved and touch my wife and she tells me to take a hike, she's really thinking about it. That's the important lesson I got out of that whole presentation. Anyway.
Greg Scott
we
has
do
a
have-
comment. Greg Scott.
Well, I have two more speakers to get in, but Greg, you have something to say. Let's say it, but make it quick. Let's say it.
Well, I will keep it short. There's others that wanted to carry on, but I just wanted to say, Brian, positive message, positive thoughts, positive actions. I thought that was something that held our attention since we have to listen to so much negativity today. I would say that on the words that you used, the 3 or 4 different words you used, pick one as the main one that you wanted to do that. And to reemphasize that in the conclusion, ask one person in the audience, say, do you agree with me? Say this word and have them say it. Turn to the Zoom bunch behind us and you pick somebody's name, say that same word, and then ask everybody to say that same word. That sews up the meaning and the message of positivity that you had. And then just simply say, Mr. Toastmaster.
Okay, all right. All right, our next speaker will be on Zoom. Our next speaker is retired family medicine physician who practiced in Rochester, New York for 18 years. She is a DTM, a double QS, a QS from District 12, a QS from District 49 in Hawaii. Currently, she is a member of Kona Toastmasters Club in Kona, Hawaii. She is an inspirational speaker and a published author of The Journey of a Lifetime. Moving to Hawaii, she'll be giving this keynote speech in person in Honolulu to the Hawaii Medical Society and Hawaii Association of Medical Staff Professionals on October the 25th and 26th. Her speech is titled Navigating the Speed Humps in Life. Please welcome Dr. Diane Piella.
Aloha, everyone. First, before I start, can you see me and can you hear me? For the people in the audience, live and online.
Online, we can hear you.
Great. Bam! Speed hump. Darn it! I did not see that coming. Have you ever hit a speed hump when you didn't expect it? Of course you have. Whether you're driving into a fast food restaurant because you're hungry or leaving the parking lot too fast. Well, that's exactly what it felt like when the phone rang in the middle of the night on January 10th, 2000. I will admit it, the ringing startled me. I looked at my caller ID, but I did not answer it. Instead, I closed my eyes and I was worried. Why? Because I was waiting for a phone call from my doctor. Mr. Toastmaster, QSs, Toastmaster members, and guests. I am Diane Piella, Dr. Diane Piella, a family medicine physician. I was in practice for 18 years. Being a doctor was what I always wanted to do. I was living my dream profession. Dr. Diane Piella. After all, it was just a week before that phone call on January 10th when I suddenly found myself dizzy, exhausted. I kept dropping things like my stethoscope. Whatever was going on with me wasn't getting better. In fact, it was becoming more worrisome. When it progressed to weakness in my left hand, left arm, left foot, and left leg, I decided to see a doctor. Yes, a doctor. The next morning, I went to see a colleague of mine who is a neurologist, Dr. M, and Dr. M is a petite, personable physician. She examined me and sent me for an MRI of my brain. I agreed, it's what I would have done. She told me she would call me with the results. As I was looking at my ringing phone, I laughed at the thought that doctors don't call patients in the middle of the night to deliver good news. It's a tip for all of you. As I picked up my ringing phone, as soon as I heard her voice, I recognized it. She said, "Hello, Diane. This is Dr. M. I've been waiting for your results all evening. I finally got them. You will never guess what your MRI showed. Your MRI showed changes indicative of multiple sclerosis." This was the speed hump I wasn't expecting. This was the speed hump I referred to in the beginning. This was the speed hump that really took my breath away. This would become my new challenge. In MS, the immune system attacks myelin and damages myelin, which is a protective covering of the brain and the spinal cord. Depending upon which nerve fibers are affected, determines which nerve signals are slowed or maybe don't even function at all. In my case, my speech was slowed and my left side of my body did not function at all. That's when Dr. M said, "Diane, I know this is a somber moment for you. Let me tell you an MS joke to lighten your mood." I said, "Sure, why not?" I thought, really? A joke? Doctors. She said, "Yes, Diane, MS can be a mess, but you can't spell mess, MESS, without MS. And on that note, I had a decision to make. I could choose wallowing in self-pity or throwing myself into physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. I chose the latter. So what brings me here today? Is it to tell you what I've learned about silly MS jokes? No. Is it to tell you what I've learned about doctors? No, but that would be an interesting speech, I admit. Is it to tell you what I've learned about speed humps? No. Today I am here to share with you the things I learned from this life-changing event. Today I'm sharing with you 3 life lessons that can and will determine how well you live your life. 1, your mindset matters. 2, never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, give up. And 3, make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. Let me repeat that for you. Make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. I have had a lot of speed humps in my life, but I've always been able to make it past them through to the other side. You can too. A speed hump is a hump in the road designed to reduce speed or slow someone down. What am I saying? A speed hump is a challenge. It can be medical, it can be financial, relationship, job related, career related. When a speed hump happens, you must drive over or around it to get to the other side. Very similar to a bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make that turn. A speed hump isn't the end of the road unless you fail to make it over the speed hump. In other words, never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, give up. This brings me to life lesson number 1. Your mindset matters. Before you even do anything or learn anything, you must have a positive mindset. And I have to give a nod back to Brian for talking about dopamine, because having a positive mindset actually increases your dopamine and it feeds back on each other. So Brian, thank you for talking about dopamine. Mindset is important no matter what you do in life. Before you even do or learn anything, you must have a positive mindset. Mindset is not predetermined. The new and trendy word mindset really is the same old frame of mind for us older folks. Frame of mind is mindset. So you must have a positive mindset before you do anything in life. Mindset is not predetermined. It is a choice you and I make every day of our lives. When Dr. M told me I had MS, I had the choice to make, to wallow in self-pity or throw myself into physical therapy. I chose the latter. I went through 9 months of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. I struggled and it wasn't easy, but I got through it. How do you think I got through it? What did I do? I surrounded myself with positive people. I found a great role model in someone I was very close to, my Uncle Stan. Uncle Stan was 69 years old when I was 43, when I was diagnosed with MS. But when my Uncle Stan was 60, he was walking along a country road and he was hit by a car going 55 miles an hour. He sustained a really bad femoral fracture and blood on the brain, subdural hematoma. He was mercy helicoptered to the hospital and he was admitted. Once he was stable, he was admitted into inpatient physical therapy and neuro rehab. He threw himself into physical therapy. What do I mean by that? If his physical therapist told him to do 10 of an exercise a day, he did 20. If a physical therapist told him to do 1 or 2 sets of an exercise a day, he did 3 sets. And guess what? He recovered 95%. I thought to myself, if Uncle Stan can do it, I can do it. If Uncle Stan could recover at 60, I knew I could recover at 43. All I had to do was put my mind to it, and I knew I could do it. Life lesson number 1, all begins up here. Because what goes on in your head determines what goes on in your heart and in your life. Your mindset matters. The second life lesson I'm sharing with you today is never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, give up. Once I went through physical therapy, I returned to work in my office. It was 9 months of physical therapy. I returned to work in my office as a family medicine physician. I still struggled though. I only could work 3 hours a day for 4 days a week, which really was not much because I was a full-time physician. But I struggled because I was so exhausted from working 3 hours. I would work 3 hours, go home, go to bed, stay in bed until the next morning, and then go to work again 3 hours for 3 or 4 days a week. And I did this day after day, again and again, until I couldn't do it anymore. 9 months of that, and I truly felt like my quality of life was just terrible. I was living to work, basically living to die. So after much thought, I decided to take a medical retirement. And I had no plans to retire at the age of 43. Can you imagine yourself at 43 years old? Retiring was truly difficult for me. I spent 20 years of my life doing something I absolutely loved, and giving it up was really a struggle for me. How would you feel if you worked for something for 20 years or more, your whole life, and all of a sudden, just like that, it was gone? Have you ever had an agonizing pain like that? Shortly after I retired, in fact, it was March of 2004, I remember a bitter cold winter day in upstate New York. I got dressed to go out to get the mail. Yes, in New York, you have to get dressed to go out to get the mail. You can't just do it like in California or Hawaii and you just go out and it's there and no problem. So I put my winter coat on, I put my winter boots on, my hat, my scarf, my gloves. Have you ever seen the movie A Christmas Story? It's a story about two young brothers, Ralphie and Randy. And when the young brother, Randy, gets dressed to go outside, he gets all bundled up and he stands like this because he can't move. Well, that's exactly who I felt like. I waddled my way out of my house to my snow-covered driveway. Before I knew it, I was in 2 feet of snow up to my knees. I lifted my legs like I was marching, and you could hear the crunch, crunch, crunch of the ice-covered snow beneath my feet. All of a sudden, bam, speed hump. I lost my balance and I fell on a 4-foot snowbank. I tried to push myself up but couldn't because of my left-sided weakness. I tried to push myself up again but couldn't. I said to myself, Diane, you better get up. You better get up, Diane. Why do I remember this? I specifically remember this because the week before, a former elderly patient of mine fell in the snow. She froze to death because she couldn't get up. No one should ever have to die like that. Finally, a neighbor drove past. He saw me and he helped me up. From this, I learned never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, give up. The third life lesson I'm sharing with you today is make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. I repeat it again. It's a long sentence. Make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. Life is full of challenges, right? I know you all understand that. After this, I decided to move from upstate New York to Southern California, where there was no cold, no ice, and no snow. Or not in Menifee anyway. That's where I lived. I decided to move to Southern California in 2006. I settled in Southern California. And I still had my dream of moving to Hawaii, a dream I had since I graduated from medical school in 1984 and first visited Hawaii in 1984. But I put that to the side for now because I was busy doing other things. I found a new neurologist in Loma Linda, Dr. G. He examined me and sent me for MRIs of my brain and cervical spine because he wanted to make sure that my symptoms were still off from MS. Dr. G called me that night and he said, Diane, you'll never guess what your MRI shows. Now, I don't know if all these neurologists went to the same medical school, but that is not a good way to talk to your patients. To his surprise and mine, my cervical spine MRI showed I had cervical spinal cord compression or narrowing to such a dangerous level that if I didn't have surgery, I would risk becoming paralyzed from the neck down. A neurosurgeon performed surgery, anterior cervical spine fusion, so that my spinal cord compression would not become worse. Now, during this time, I began some personal development classes, and one of the call to action was to join a Toastmasters club to become a better speaker. So I did. I did not want to limit myself to learning new skills. And you must be open to learning new skills throughout your whole life, no matter how old, 7 or 70 or 90. You got to be open to learning new skills throughout your whole life. In January of 2013, I noticed profound weakness of just my left hand and left arm, more so than what I normally had. I saw my neurologist. He ordered MRIs. This time, my cervical spine MRI showed worsening of my cervical spinal cord compression, worsening after I had the surgery in 2006. This time, my MRI of my cervical spine showed I had a screw loose. Now, my friends always said I had a screw loose. I guess they were right. I saw a neurosurgeon. He performed posterior cervical spine fusion and placed a rod in my neck to make sure that I would not have further spinal cord compression. I recovered. I went through therapy. Everything was good. Later in January of 2013, I developed near paralysis of the left side of my body again for the second time. This time I found a new neurologist in California. She put my whole medical history together. She's at UCSD. She's wonderful. She sent me for MRIs, and this time the new MRI of my brain showed I had a cerebral hemorrhage or brain bleed in the exact same area of my brain affected by my MS. That's why my symptoms were very similar. I recovered and I went through therapy. This time I was adamant about not being limited by my MS or any other medical problems. Now I am still sharing about life lesson number 3, make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. After this, I decided to continue my Toastmaster journey to become an even better speaker in 2015. By being open to learning new skills, who knows where you can end up, right? I would not have my medical challenges limit my speaking skills, my book writing skills, or my dream of moving to Hawaii. My challenges became my next journey. My challenges became the next chapter of my life. From these challenges, I now am an inspirational speaker. From these challenges, I now am a published author of The Journey of a Lifetime Moving to Hawaii. From these challenges, I now live in Kona, Hawaii. Yes, it took me 34 years to get here, but I'm here and I'm happy. So life is full of challenges. You know that. Based on the stories I have just shared with you, I have 3 takeaways for you. 1, attitude and perspective. 2, resilience and perseverance. And 3, embrace life's challenges. I call it R, A-R-E, attitude, resilience, and embrace. The first takeaway, attitude. Attitude and perspective play important roles in how we respond to challenges. By consciously thinking that our speed humps are temporary instead of permanent, we can maintain a sense of hope and motivation for the future. By consciously thinking that our speed humps are temporary instead of permanent, we can avoid getting stuck in negative thinking and self-doubt. By consciously thinking that our speed humps are temporary and not permanent, we can adopt a growth mindset, which means just that challenges are mere opportunities for learning and development. Second takeaway, resilience and perseverance. Resilience, and Ralph talked about this, so thank you, Ralph, a nod to the resilience and your mental toughness that you talked about. Resilience comes in all shapes and sizes. Resilience is the ability to adapt to adjust to recover from challenges. Resilience and perseverance are essential to navigate life's speed humps. When faced with challenges, as we discussed, one, having a positive mindset is important. Focus on the solutions, not the problems or the challenges. Refusing to give up is important, even when it seems insurmountable. That's perseverance. Asking for help or asking for support. If there's anything I learned in Toastmasters, it's ask for help. And usually you'll get it. And fourth, learn from your mistakes and make them stepping stones towards your success. With resilience and perseverance, you can develop the mental toughness and the determination to overcome your speed humps. Third takeaway, embrace life's challenges. As we said, life's challenges, or I refer to them as speed humps, can be thought of as opportunities for learning and development. By accepting these challenges rather than resenting them, you can develop valuable skills like adaptability, problem solving, self-awareness. By accepting these challenges rather than resenting them, you can have a more optimistic approach. By accepting these challenges rather than resenting them, you can develop greater resilience and a sense of accomplishment in overcoming your speed humps. I started out today by asking some very important questions. Perhaps you have had something huge and unexpected happen in your life. Perhaps you do have a hard time getting into a positive mindset from time to time. It happens to all of us. Perhaps you do feel like giving up from time to time. It also happens to all of us. Perhaps now is the time to make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. You may have speed humps in life. It happens. Drive over or around them until you're on the road to your destination again. As you leave here today, 1, your mindset matters. Think and believe you can, and you can. Remember, attitude, A. 2, never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, give up. I am living proof you can't overcome. Remember, R, resilience. 3, make your challenge the beginning of your next journey. In fact, don't be held down or limited by your challenge or disability in life. Embrace life's challenges. There's your A-R-E, R, attitude, resilience, and embrace. I guarantee if you do these 3 things, you will overcome the speed humps in your life. Mr. Toastmaster.
Learning there. I know you designed this to speak to medical associations, but as a person who spent their entire working career working with young people, knowing that the level of suicide in teenagers now is much higher than probably has ever been. With very little adaptation, I think this would be an excellent speech for high school assemblies.
Okay.
Do we have a couple of brief comments? Maybe not too much because we are going way over, but thanks to our having to get a slow start. But if we do not, I won't see any quick. I will begin, make the announcement for our third speaker. Vaccine motion here now. Are we ready or not? Okay. All right, Suzanne Lee is an inspirational keynote speaker who has been delivering talks focused on dispelling the myths about people with disabilities. She is living with blindness, but no longer is going to remain invisible. Her mission is to educate, inspire, and give hope to those currently living with blindness or any disabilities. Suzanne's life work is focused on ensuring that everyone understands that life can change unexpectedly and one could become disabled at any time. She knows that life comes in all shapes and sizes and knows no boundaries except the ones we place upon ourselves. Suzanne recognizes that fear is a major reason why the world is hesitant to acknowledge, discuss, and often misjudge those with disabilities. She has experienced these prejudices firsthand. People living with blindness must deal with an unemployment rate of approximately 75% due to misconceptions and stereotypes about the blind. Through her inspirational talks, Suzanne aims to educate, inspire, and give hope to those living with disabilities. She is a powerful voice advocating greater understanding and inclusion. The speech today, we are only as blind as we want to be. The title, I Thrive.
Have you ever known someone who displayed unwavering determination and extraordinary strength to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges? I knew a young girl named Katie. When she was just 6 weeks old, she was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. This is a neurological condition which causes cerebral spinal fluid, CSF, to build up in the head. As a result, she is totally blind in her right eye and had usable sight in her left eye. After undergoing a CT scan, her parents were given a bleak prognosis. Katie would be blind, deaf, and mentally retarded. Surgery was the only option. A shunt was placed immediately. A shunt placement involves shaving a part of the back of the head, making an incision, drilling a hole in the ventricle of the brain, and placing a small catheter. Another small incision is made behind the ear where another catheter is placed. This catheter runs down the neck area into the stomach. A valve is placed under the skin in the back of the head. And the valve connects the two catheters. When the intracranial pressure rises, the valve opens up, the cerebral spinal fluid goes down the shunt tubing or catheter and absorbs into the stomach. Katie had 2 more surgeries at 2 and 5 to lengthen the tubing because of growth. When a child grows, when the tubing gets too short, it increases the intracranial pressure and headaches begin. So they have to lengthen the tubing. For 5 years, Katie was like any other little girl. She loved to run and play hopscotch and skip and jump rope and everything that all her friends loved to do. She was very active in kickball and soccer. But soon her childhood would come to an abrupt stop. After she celebrated her 10th birthday, Katie began seeing dark spots, sort of like when you go outside from a movie theater. Katie was scared. She didn't know if she was ever going to see again. After a visit with the retina surgeon, it was determined that Katie's retina had detached completely. Now, retina detachment is not life-threatening. However, if it is not treated immediately, it could lead to blindness or sight loss. And basically what retina detachment is, it's a tearing away from the blood vessels. Katie had to wear a patch over her eye. And also during the surgery, it was also determined that she had cataracts on the lens of her eye, if you can imagine that. and the lens of her eye had to be removed. You don't know that the lens of your eye, it kind of acts as a camera lens, and it helps to bring the light out of your eye. So having that removed, Katie was no longer able to see at night. She was no longer able to engage in those physical activities because she was told that if she hit her head or something happened, the lights would be out and they wouldn't be able to get her sight back. She would be totally blind. This devastated Katie tremendously because she was so active. She was so used to playing with her friends. I also want to mention at this time, her parents were very much by her side during this whole situation. The cost of the surgery was enormous, and her dad, they didn't know how they were going to pay for the surgery. And her dad, being a very humble man, had to approach his business, a business friend of his, and he was able to get the loan. And her parents literally spent $10,000 so that Katie could hopefully get her eyesight back. They were very dedicated to that. So for about a year or 18 months, Katie, again, was back in life and enjoying school. But then she began experiencing excruciating headaches again. Her parents rushed her to the pediatric neurosurgeon who drained fluid off her brain. This caused Katie to black out. She was rushed to the emergency room immediately, and a intracranial pressure study was performed, and it revealed that she had low intracranial pressure. Her ventricles were too small, unlike hydrocephalus, where they're too big. Katie had surgery once again to have another valve placed in, and she didn't wake up for 2 more days, for 2 days after that, because her brain was trying to adjust to the new pressure in her head. After that, Katie was great. She didn't even know she had a shunt. And for 3 long years, junior high and her first year in high school, again, Katie thrived. She loved, again, she was in school. She was with her friends. She was going to the mall. But suddenly, again, her life stopped. At age 15, she began experiencing headaches again. And she was over-shunting. But not only was she over-shunting, she had developed a bacterial infection in her cerebrospinal fluid. And because she had a foreign body in her, it was impossible to get rid of. From the age of 15 to 24, Katie would endure over 100 neurosurgeries and numerous hospitalizations. During each hospitalization, it was a 6-week stay. The shunt had to be removed completely. Her cerebrospinal fluid had to be drained on the outside of her. She had a central line to administer the antibiotics. She was in a private room because she had an infectious disease, so she was alone a lot. And it got very lonely for Katie. She didn't have much contact with the outside world other than her family and some very close friends came to see her. She lost a lot of friends because they didn't want to be around somebody who was enduring all these medical challenges. A highlight of Katie's stays was that she was able to bring in her rocking chair from home, her TV, her 19-inch Emerson TV. Her mom had a big bowl of candy in the room for the doctors to munch on and the nurses to eat. She tried to make the best of each stay. Her parents came to visit her. Her dad came in the morning before work, and her mom came in the late afternoon after work. And one day, one of her nurses said, "I'm so sorry your parents are divorced." And Katie was confused. How did you know my parents are divorced? They're not divorced. She said, because your dad comes in the morning and your mom comes in the afternoon. But the nurse didn't realize that they had to work in order to have the medical insurance to pay for the surgeries and lengthy hospitalizations. One hospitalization, Katie was all packed, all ready to go home. She had been there for 6 weeks, and her nurse looked at the back of her head and saw that an incision had reopened. And she showed one of the neurosurgeons, who immediately said, you're going to have another surgery and 1 more month in the hospital. This devastated Katie because it put off all her plans, everything she had planned to do, going to school and just getting on with her life. Eventually, Katie qualified for a cutting-edge surgery known as the endoscopic third ventriculostomy. So try saying that one after a couple of glasses of wine. This is a surgery which involves cauterizing a hole in the third ventricle of the brain, hence third ventriculostomy. Katie was no longer shunt dependent because now the fluid was being absorbed in the brain like yours is and other people. She no longer had infections because she didn't have a foreign body. She didn't have to stay long 6-week stays in the hospital. This was her miracle surgery, finally. The end of all surgeries. How would you have dealt with or coped with all these surgeries and hospital stays? How would you have reacted? What would you have done? Not being able to be around friends and, well, that little girl, Katie, is standing in front of you today and is now a grown woman. And I'm here to remind you that you can, any adversity, you can triumph over any adversity that comes your way. I guarantee it. I'm living proof. I was ready to get back into school, get back into life. And I realized that my precious eyesight had significantly declined. I was no longer able to read large print or walk independently. I got a letter in the mail from a vocational rehabilitation counselor, Christy, and I made an appointment. And she immediately said, I want you to go to Orientation Center for the Blind in the Bay Area, OCB, or as many of us call it, ouch, crash, bang. I said to her, I am not going to OCB. I just got well. I'm at home. I'm with my friends. I'm having a good time. But after kissing several poles and playing footsie with steps, I decided to go to OCB, and I am so glad I did. This wonderful school and caring staff provided a wonderful environment. With Braille and assistive technology, such as a screen reader, I'm able to communicate with my friends, stay in contact with them. I can read again using Braille, assistive tech, my screen reader, email, and surf the web. You learn to walk with your head held high with a white cane, and make sure you don't run into the poles. That might be in your way. You got to use proper cane technique. But most importantly, I learned self-advocacy. I learned how to advocate for myself, which is very important. And a couple of ways that I like to self-advocate is, number one, I'd like to share is to don't be shy. Don't be shy. Say hello to someone who is blind. We don't bite, honest. People who are blind don't have better hearing. We have better listening skills out of necessity. Try closing your eyes sometime. And if you see a person who is blind who may need assistance, ask first. It's jarring to have anyone pulling and prodding them, especially when you can't see. I was never alone, and you're not alone either. There are many caring people in the world who are willing and able to walk alongside you through your journey. As a person who is legally blind, I believe 3 of the most important skills to acquire are self-advocacy, orientation and mobility skills, and maintaining a strong support system. Some of the organizations that I participate in now, I'm very active in American Council of the Blind, which is our national organization, California Council of the Blind, and very involved in those. I go to conventions. Toastmasters, I joined Toastmasters in 2013 because I wanted to improve my communication and leadership skills. That's one of the reasons I'm here. Some of the other organizations that I belong to are Association for Deaf Education and Counseling. And let's see, and I also help out at the Braille Institute. I'm very much involved with the Braille Institute. But by helping others, I have learned that helps yourself in doing that. I shared my story with you to help you recognize that loss comes in all shapes and sizes, and we cannot know what we will know we cannot know what we will face in the future. But the 3 strengths that help me, that might help you, are your family, your friends, and most importantly to me, it's your faith. When it comes to family, lean on them. When it comes to your friends, those are your confidants. And when it comes to your faith, those are your beliefs. One quote from Helen Keller that I very much like is when she said, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight, but no vision." Ladies and gentlemen, 3 takeaways I would like you to leave here tonight with. As a person who is legally blind, I believe 3 of the most important skills to acquire are self-advocacy, orientation and mobility skills, and maintaining a strong support system. I cannot stress enough the importance of advocating for ourselves. We are the keys to coexisting in both the sighted and non-sighted world. And that's a more fulfilling life. I guarantee it. Mr. Toastmaster.
I'm gonna come over here. Is it serotonin I'm gonna get him?
Yeah.
Whatever that is. Great job. Great job. So glad you're here today.
Me too.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken in person. I was talking to Diane earlier tonight. Like, I haven't spoken in person too much lately, so it's nice.
I think I picked a theme here. You know, there's 2 things that seem to follow all of the speakers.
Brain.
And that is never stop learning.
Never stop. Yeah.
And never give up.
And never. Yeah. And another thing was the brain. There was a lot about the brain, the CT scan, the MRI, the serotonin. That's
Oh yeah, all that good stuff. Yeah, that's good.
you got a small education. So thank you.
All right,
Mr.
thank
Tom.
you
I
again.
got to give you a hug.
Yeah.
He used to be my boyfriend, but then he decided no more. So. Okay. Oh yeah, I got to unmic me.
Sorry to keep you late, but I think we have a pretty powerful program.
Oh yeah, I got to take that
Thank you all
out.
for being here. Thank all the people who came on Zoom, and thank all the people that came in person. We are looking forward to having greater and greater attendance in person. Reminder that this December meeting, we expect to have a pretty full house, because if you want to vote on who the best speakers are, you're going to have to be here. It'll be real trophies. For November, we do have 3 speakers, and looking forward to hearing those 3 speakers in November, and maybe we'll even finish on time. Yeah. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for all the people that have helped out.